Given this definition of the term neo-Darwinism, it is easy to see how IC is not an attack on evolution per se, it is rather an attack on evolution through primarily an extremely slow natural selection process. It is hard to see how the bacterial flagellum, which we are assuming is IC for the sake of argument, could have gradually developed to its present state through gradual minor genetic modification. If parts X, Y, and Z are all necessary for the function A, and we start out with only X, then, say, a million years later add Y, we still don't have function A. Whether the bacterial flagellum or any natural system is irreducibly complex is another question. All I'm saying here is that if it is, then it is not possible to arise through gradual genetic modification and natural selection. If there is IC, that is, neo-Darwinism is false, though evolution per se could still be true. If not gradual natural selection, then what? Well, we know that a mousetrap was designed intelligently. And while there are important differences between man-made and biological entities, the fact remains that in a natural IC system, if there is such a thing, there is a means to ends relationship. And means to ends are usually the result of intentionality. At the very least, we may say that given IC in nature, it is more plausible than not that such systems, irreducibly complex systems, were the result of intentionality. So if there are irreducibly complex systems, it's more likely than not that they were designed by an intelligence. Notice next that the observation of putative ID in the world is just that. It is natural observation of what natural entities are naturally like. Naturally. Nothing is beyond science here. We then take these empirical observations and draw conclusions from them. Also, nothing different from what ordinary science does. But, says the critic, the intelligent designer we are inferring is God, and we must keep the non-overlapping magisteria mutually exclusive. To this, I reply, what about the Big Bang? When it first came out, the Big Bang theory was very controversial because it held a beginning of the world which, in turn, seems to presuppose a beginner or a God. And atheist physicists did not want there to be a God, and so they've been trying ever since to come up with an alternative to the Big Bang. Yet today the Big Bang is the most solid theory within physics. I am not saying that ID in biology is equivalent to the Big Bang in physics. However, if theistic implications are okay with respect to the Big Bang, then they must be okay with respect to ID in biology as well. Otherwise, science is guilty of special pleading to the most obscene degree. Secondly, in reply to the critic, I would say, a theory of science can be independent from what conclusions are drawn from it. For example, a comparison of general relativity with quantum mechanics has led some people to infer string theory. String theory has not yet been proven, but after enough time elapses, perhaps someday it will be proven. This hypothetical future discovery shall disprove quantum gravity. Yet quantum gravity is also inferred from a comparison of quantum mechanics with general relativity. The point I am trying to make is that if we know B is true, and we think we can infer D from B, but we don't like D, that in no way disproves what we already know to be true, namely B. In other words, if we can scientifically prove that there is ID in the first place, what this designer is like, or who this designer turns out to be, is besides the point. Proof of ID is proof of ID. And this brings up my third rebuttal to the critic of intelligent design. We can detect, scientifically, intelligent design. This is uncontroversial in every area of science apart from what we've been considering so far. Cryptography is a common example from outside of natural science. Within natural science, a common example of where we allow for the possibility of intelligent design and that we can discover it if it's present. The traditional example from natural science is the SETI program, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. The scientists working on the SETI project assume they can detect intentionality in the extraterrestrial communication. If there are extraterrestrials and they communicate with us, they could see the intentionality there, or the intelligence in that communicated message. This intentionality is clearly not communication from a Judeo-Christian God, but the people in the ID movement tend to refrain from identifying the intelligent designer with the Judeo-Christian deity anyhow. So that would be a straw man. By the way, in the movie Expelled, Richard Dawkins says that he allows for the possibility of aliens existing and designing life on Earth. He elsewhere whines about how stupid people in the ID movement are, and how stupid creationists, by which he means ID proponents, are, and how unenlightened they are. But if the intelligent designer of the life we observe on Earth turns out to be aliens, the ID proponents would be perfectly happy with that. So what is Dawkins' problem with the ID movement? It seems he doesn't have one after all. But we are used to his double talk by now, and this shouldn't surprise us. Again, so nobody misses the point, even somebody so intelligent like Dawkins. I'll repeat the point so nobody, even Dawkins, will not miss it. So to repeat, all ID people are saying is that they see intelligent design in biological entities. Who this designer is, or who these designers are, is irrelevant. And while we're talking about Dawkins, I just want to say that he has continuously refused to debate William Lane Craig, and this is a real shame, and we really ought to hold him accountable to do that, because Dawkins is the premier apologist for the so-called New Atheism. Dr. Craig is the premier apologist for Christianity. So they really ought to hold a debate. They both debate other people. Why would you not debate the top man in his respective field? So Richard Dawkins, if you are listening to this, and I know you're probably not, but if you are, shame on you, debate Dr. William Lane Craig. But if the intentionality inference is legitimate everywhere else, why not here too? The main reason normally given for this particular exception, or peculiar exception, seems to be that biology is science, and science can't appeal to religious concepts like God. But I've already explained why this is a misunderstanding of ID, and once ID is correctly understood, this contention of the ID rejector collapses.